Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to Shift AI, and thank you for still being with us after all that's happened. Now, something a little bit different. We're going to do a interview with Aisling Fogarty. Aisling, say hi.
Hello.
She works for nineDots, which is a specialist recruitment agency that works with AI developers and people that work with computers and anything related. So we're going to be talking about a little bit of what's been going on lately because of this pandemic and what the issues are with people trying to hire and to onboard and whatnot. So, Aisling, just to start off, what are some of the roadblocks today that companies have when trying to hire and onboard people?
Sure. I think at the moment the current situation has kind of enforced companies, if you like, to adopt to hiring and onboarding remotely, and not every company is used to something like that. So I think the first roadblock really is companies getting their heads around this being a very different process. Now, it's a different process for everybody involved, and candidates interviewing and joining new companies. It's a bit of a different experience for people who aren't used to it or who haven't done it before. So I think with that, you need to take some time to recognize what's going to be a little bit different. So the roadblocks that can come up would very much be identifying what do we need to change, what do we need to perhaps adapt as part of our interview process and onboarding process, and making sure that you're planning to set yourselves up for success in the best possible way. So I think mostly it really is about it being a new experience for some, and in a way some companies maybe not knowing how to best move forward if it's a completely new experience for them.
Okay, so you're very specialized in technology companies. Technology companies do have an advantage here, as a lot of them can easily do things virtually, just like we're doing this conference right now. So what is sort of, if you're a technology company and some of them are even hiring, even at the same speed as before and whatever, how do they start with like the hiring process? What is their first steps that would be different than a normal, in-person sort of hiring process?
Yeah, for sure. I think the first thing is to plan everything. Even to the point where you could map out what your current interview process looks like. How many stages, who does certain interviews, how long they take. And having that as almost like a roadmap for what your standard process looks like is quite helpful, because then it allows you to identify things that may need to be changed. So, for example, some interviews, if they're usually done in person, would be a different experience doing them virtually, like whiteboarding sessions, for example. So I think planning as much as possible really allows you to move forward better. So in that sense, once you've identified what your standard interview process looks like and what areas you may need to slightly change or tweak just so that they're remote friendly or video friendly, that's really kind of the best way to start. That's your best foot forward. Identifying, for example, I'll just take whiteboarding as an example. What technologies might you need to use now that you wouldn't have had to use before to allow for your interview processes to move forward? So really, the more you plan, the less mistakes or the less surprises that might come up in the future. And it should allow you to move an awful lot more smoothly than going on the fly or just trying to figure things out as they come up. Spending that time at the very beginning to figure things out from the start is really kind of the ideal way to move forward.
Cool. So that being said, you mentioned whiteboards. Also, so what are some of the things, like specific topics we can talk about that people need to think about? Now, you said whiteboards, there's things like pair code programming, and also the entire sort of environment? How do we get people? So when we interview someone, they usually come to the office. So all these sort of in-person things, how do companies that are trying to hire, how should they do this in this sort of remote first world?
Yeah, so if you take an in-person interview or an office environment interview, usually you're going to meet a few different people. You might have a tour around the office, if it's somebody who's kind of coming close to the end of their process. Just because we can't do things in person at the moment doesn't mean that we have to lose the human connection. So some of the general rules of thumb would be, when looking at remote interviews or virtual interviews, the first thing is be on time. You don't want to have a person sitting in a virtual meeting room for 10 minutes or so, wondering who's going to turn up. So I think being on time, being punctual, ensuring that the environment that you're conducting the interview from is, distraction-free as best as possible. Maybe you have a room that you can pop a sign on the outside of the door to say an interview is in process, but eliminating as many distractions as possible is hugely important. If you're conducting an interview, you want the person on the other side to really feel that you can hear them and that you're listening to them and that you're not getting distracted by things in the room. And even though we can't always control pets and children wandering into rooms, the more you do to kind of eliminate potential distractions, the better. In terms of the office space, not necessarily being able to see the office space as you would do in an in-person meeting, that's an interesting one. We kind of felt that if you had some photos, for example, from various company events or office events that you could put together in a slide deck, that's really handy to show people what the space looks like, and this will be where you'll be based when all of this passes. So the more kind of tools that you have at your disposal to be able to show people what the space looks like, the better. Another really important one is going to be having people available to answer questions. This could be a very new process for some people. Maybe not everybody has done a fully remote interview, and they might be nervous, and there might be things that they feel they didn't get to ask or they forget about. So I think having somebody available, on the team that they could be joining to be able to answer questions and things like that would be very, very useful. Like, ultimately, you want to make this as seamless a process as is possible. Over communicate absolutely everything. Uncertainty is a really popular word right now, but I think a lot of people feel, maybe a little bit insecure. They could be in a situation where they need a job. So the more you can communicate and keep them in the loop about what's happening in their process, the better. So it's really just about being contactable, recognizing what your interviews look like and what tools you need in order for them to be able to move forward smoothly. And that kind of ties back to planning all of this from the very beginning.
So definitely we have to communicate as much as possible and get people sort of feeling that you're trying to, really talk to them. You mentioned that we should do that through various channels and also set up some sort of like pictures so they can see what the office looks like, what the office parties look like, what the office, meetings look like, so they get a sense of feeling for that company, which is great. I expect that most people do not have that, so it's definitely something to look into. Let's say we hired someone. So how would onboarding look like? Because usually when we onboard someone, it's like, okay, you start working and then you see them, they come in the office, they pick up their computer their laptop, whatever, and they start working and you see them. Now there's nothing. Like, they're probably not allowed to see you. So how do we even start off if we decided to hire someone, like, to get them, working?
Get them on board, if you like. Yeah, the onboarding process is massively important. It's the first experience that a new employee has as part of your company, and that journey, or that kind of experience of joining a new company, it it sets the tone for a person's journey with your company. So again, planning is the big one here, but generally speaking, things that are really, really useful to have would be an onboarding document that you could send out to a new employee maybe a week before they start, just so they have time to read through it. But the onboarding document should be a single source of truth for absolutely everything that this person may need to know in their new job. You know, it can include things like a welcome message, you know, here's your role, your responsibilities, this is the team mission, this is who your team are, but also outlining, you know, a kind of a calendar, if you like, of this is what your first day looks like. This is week 1, week 2, 3, 4, all the way up to maybe the first 3 months of a person's employment. You know, what you can expect in these weeks, what you can expect to achieve after a month. Definitely who you need to meet, a little section on who you'll need to speak to when you join. And I think that's particularly important, you know, obviously when we can't meet people in person right now, to be able to connect with people that you will be communicating with pretty frequently in your new role. So what's quite handy is to have pre-populated a new employee's calendar before they join, with meetings with like their hiring manager, different people on the team, or people within other areas of the business who they may need to connect with. Set up video calls with an agenda about, you know, what they're going to be discussing. I think that's really important for helping people feel part of a team, you know, when you get to connect with as many people as possible, even if it is, you know, over video. It's definitely different, you know, your first day starting a job remotely than you would be in the office. When it comes to the equipment side of things, allow for delays. If you know that you've got somebody starting in maybe a month's time, then make sure you check in, you know, with your couriers, you know, your chosen delivery service, just to see if they're experiencing any delays, so that you can plan ahead, make sure that your new employee has everything they need for their first day. Excuse me. The onboarding document then as well should have all the onboarding materials that a person might need. So usually when a person starts their new role, they might have a session with HR, they might have a session with, you know, the IT team or finance, or, you know, whoever is necessary. So I think ensuring that all of those resources are available in a single place is really important, because obviously it's not as easy now just to, you know, shout over to your colleague somewhere to ask them a question. So the onboarding document should really comprise of absolutely everything that a person may need to kind of get themselves set up for success, who they'll need to speak to and what they need to achieve in their role.
So that means that a lot more things have to go into planning, as I can expect. Even when we work, when everyone's in the same office, you can sort of, you know, fix things along the way, jump on someone, oh, I forgot to give you this, here you go. And here you have to plan everything, get it on time, have like a data room with all those documents, which I'm guessing a lot of smaller companies don't have. So that's going to be a bit of work, but I do understand that it makes sense for them. Also, I'm guessing, so all their like laptops and computers should be shipped to them in order to have it, get it to their house so they can set it up at home. Hopefully it arrives though on time, otherwise they won't have something to be working on. But also, do you have any tips sort of how to do bonding? I mean, usually when you come to a new office, it's like, hey, you meet people randomly, not just the people you have to work with directly. You grab a beer, a coffee, a glass of wine, whatever you do. Mm-hmm. Like, we have these virtual like Zoom, Slack, Skype things, but is there anything that you have learned from companies you worked with that works better than others, sort of to get that bond going between people? Because I think that's really important.
It is. It definitely is. I mean, when you're in an office with people all day, obviously you can bond with them an awful lot quicker than, well, sometimes than you can remotely. It's a little bit different, obviously, working side by side with people rather than virtually for the time being. So I think what's really important is to be very definite about setting time aside for the team to get together. Now, maybe that's, every Friday you do a quiz, or maybe you have drinks or just chats, but really kind of mapping that time out for the whole team to get together over Zoom or Hangouts or, whatever works best for you. As opposed to saying, oh, we'll do that, we'll get to that, we'll do it at some point. Like, have it in the calendar every week. Because it is a very stressful situation, I guess, for quite a lot of people. And, particularly when you're starting a new job, that can be stressful enough in at the best of times. So feeling that you have a team that you can chat with and just get to know, it's so important to have something where everybody can come together. Obviously tools like Slack are absolutely amazing to be able to communicate with everybody really, really quickly, but it's nice to have some face-to-face time with people. So, once a week, maybe it's a half an hour, maybe it's an hour, however long people have time for. Absolutely putting that time aside is vital. But as well as that, I think what's a really nice idea is doing shout outs. So if somebody has done, a good job on something, or they've gone the extra mile to get something finished, recognize it. Whether something is big or small, it's important to recognize all the wins. It means a lot to people, and having recognition for doing a good job, it makes people feel closer to their team. So maybe people want to do that over email, or have a Slack channel, like a gratitude Slack channel or a shout outs channel, something like that, where everybody can see when somebody has done a good job. So the more inclusive you can be of the whole team, the better. And I think that does come from management as well. So lead by example, be that strong communicator, and be the person that arranges the weekly catch-ups and things like that, because your leaders' actions are going to be a new employee's kind of what they follow. So being very, very definite about everything that you do, and making sure that it's an inclusive experience for everybody, not just for new employees, but for existing employees who might be new to remote working as well. Making sure that everybody still feels part of the team and still feels together is really, really important right now.
Great. So you work with companies on doing this. Is there any positive side to all this stuff going on right now? I mean, it's obviously takes more planning, which people usually didn't do because it wasted their time. And they have to have everything in the same place, everything documented, everything planned. We don't know how long this is going to go on, but is there a positive effect perhaps in the companies you work with, and that maybe their entire onboarding experience can now be easier, better, whatever in the future? I mean, what is your experience with that so far?
I think it is going to be, there are going to be positives to come from it, definitely. Some companies who maybe haven't been open to remote working before and have now been forced into it can see that it is something that can work. It's quite likely that companies will have to onboard multiple new employees. So it's not going to be a case where, okay, we just have to do this once and then we move on and never think about it again. It is going to be something that you'll most likely have to do quite a few times. And, don't be afraid of making mistakes. Like, mistakes happen, and that's just part of life. You learn and you move on. But I think in the end, like when we do come through from this, there is going to be more of an open mind around remote working. For companies, maybe that means you've got access to candidates that you didn't have access to before, because not everybody can relocate, for example. So if anything, it kind of widens the net of how your company can grow if you can adapt to remote working, adapt to remote onboarding. It's really only going to be a positive thing. And everybody does work differently. Everybody has an environment that they work in better. Some people are so much more productive working remotely, and some people are better in a team. But if your company is set up where you can have both of those, that's really only ever going to be a positive thing. So Yeah, I do think a lot of companies will be that bit more adaptable or potentially be a little bit more open-minded when it might not have been something that they considered before.
Cool. So we're running out of time. So do you have any sort of last bits of advice on either side, the onboarding or the hiring process?
Yeah, I think given the current situation, I do think, be mindful about why we have to do this right now. I think be mindful that some people are quite stressed. This isn't going to be forever, but the more planning that you put into this and the more work, it's really only going to set your company up for success. It's not going to be wasted time. It's just going to help you to move forward that bit quicker. So be mindful of the situation. Be mindful that people might be more nervous when they're interviewing. Be mindful that your processes will be a little bit different to what they were before, but it doesn't mean that they can't be successful. Like humans can adapt to things, and we just have to try and learn if things don't go 100% right the first time around.
All right. Ashlyn, thank you very much. If anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out to her. She will be in the chat, I think, right now. But also you have her contact information on our website, and you can also find her at nineDots.io. So thank you all very much, and off to the next talk.